welcome to my bed. That wasn't an invitation. Because it makes sense if you think about what time of year it is. June. Why not go for the books that I read last year? Over 6 months ago, you know? Also, I made my own tier. Because I was going to use the tier thing, you know, that the classic tier website. And my photos just weren't loading, and I just couldn't really be bothered trying to figure all that out. But I could be bothered spending hours making my own tier table. So, at the bottom we have We Were Liars. That's what the tier's called. That's all that I'll say about that book. It was 200 pages of nothing. Then we move up to the purple tier called I Should Have Used This Time to Read Something Else. 2 stars. And those are the things that I should have used my time to read something else because they were a waste of time. I wouldn't read them again, and they're probably not in my possessions anymore. Then we have the meh, you know, I vibed with them, but they're gone. And then we have the enjoyed, then moved on, because I enjoyed, and then I enjoyed the books, and then I probably wouldn't read them again. But maybe I would. No, because it's 4 stars. But it's better than a meh. Because did I really enjoy a meh? Maybe I'll end up changing the title of all these. Maybe I did terribly. 4.5 is Read Me. Because you should read those. My reviews are accurate for everybody. This is not an opinion thing. What I say goes. Then we have the 5-star section, which is called the 5 stars all round. I kind of refused a lot last year to give book 5 stars because those books that I was thinking about giving 5 stars weren't A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So now A Good Girl's Guide to Murder gets its own tier head. The top tier, the 6-star tier, is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So let's see what goes in that one. They're not really in order. I would like to think that they're in order. I can try and do them in order, but they're not. So I won't be. Yeah. I think we'll start with The Appeal. So I read The Appeal in June, I think, whilst I was away at camp, and this is like a little campy thing in Reading, and it's told entirely in emails and it's a murder mystery, and I do think I have kept it, so that's something. I do think I'll put it in the meh tier, because although I've kept it and although I enjoyed it, the mystery was not that entertaining and I didn't really care for any of the characters, but it was really fun to read because it was told in emails. If it weren't told in emails, I probably would have despised it. Then we have The Accidental Medium, we'll go with that. Put that in enjoyed and moved on. I really liked the main character in this. So basically, The Accidental Medium by Tracy Whitwell it's actually a series. There's now a second book of it and I've read that recently, called Gin Palace, and it's about Tans, and she sort of has psychic abilities. She's kind of mastering them a little bit in this book, and she's sort of talking to the dead, and she ends up kind of solving a murder with it, which is kind of iconic. If we then go for the Atlas 6, I read in December, maybe November. It's going to be ages till the second book comes out in paperback. It's meant to be next January. I'm like, why is it taking so long? Anyway, the Atlas 6, I vibed with it. It didn't end how I wanted it to end, but I have to see how the series goes. I'd put it in meh for now. It involved these, I think it was 6 kids with magical powers, and they all get sent to sort of this establishment where they compete against one another, sort of intellectually. And then only 5 of them can get through to sort of be with all the scholars and things or stuff like that. You know, that's a clear set of rules. Only 5 of them can get through, but they kind of change it a little bit as it goes along. That's the whole tension of the book, is that this thing is going to happen and that 5 of them are going to go through and one of them is going to be sad and they don't entirely know what's happening to that one person. But then they kind of do it. I felt like a bit of a cop-out at the ending. The Last Library. I read this October time. It was good, but not great. I didn't need to read it. It was a very simple story about this little community who love their library and it's getting closed down because of the council. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Oh my god, I cannot put this in enjoyed and then moved on. No, I'm putting it in the read me because it's Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling, we're not a stan, but it's Harry Potter. And I do want to do a vlog rereading all of them, even though I've read the first two many times. But the Marlow Murder Club, that was a good book. Put that in the read me section. So the Marlow Murder Club is by Robert Thorogood, and he wrote the Death in Paradise series on the BBC, which is like murder mystery fabulousness. And it's so good. And I think this one's being adapted into a TV series as well. So it's about this woman, this like elderly lady whose name I have forgotten, but it's a series. The paperback of the next book I think is even coming out this month, so goddamn, that'll probably be read very soon. And you know, she loves a crossword puzzle. There's been a few murders happening around recently, and she's just like sleuthing it out with two youngins. They're like an unlikely trio, and it's just kind of vibes. I really enjoyed it. It was really like lighthearted and funny. The Cousins by Karen M. McManus. I put that in the meh. There was a borderline incest plot going on. There isn't, but like there almost was. And you know, can't really support that. I enjoyed the end of the mystery. You're kind of fine. So it's about these three cousins. They've been invited to sort of their grandma's island. They're called the Stories. That's like their last name, that's their family name. And all their parents, so like the grandmother's children, have been isolated from the grandmother for reasons unbeknownst to us and unbeknownst to them. So these three grandchildren have been invited to the island willy-nilly. No one understands why. Everything feels kind of strange, and it's a bit like, why are we invited? And they sort of figure out the mystery of why they were sort of cut off and why they were invited back and things like that. I know people like this book a lot. I didn't finish it, and I skimmed to the end. This gal can see ghosts, and she's back home at the morgue. And this guy that was like her boss or something got hit by a car and died, and his ghost has kind of shown up, and he's like, what's happened? And they kind of like each other. I just didn't care for any of it. I found the main character really irritating. I did not like her. The Other Passenger by Louise Candlish. It was fine. I was really quite disappointed because I'd had this book for a while, and I've got another book by her, so I will give her another chance at some point. But I just found it really underwhelming. Like, it was fine to read. It took me ages to get through. I found the writing kind of difficult to get into, and the story itself was fine. And it was basically about this guy that takes a boat a lot of the time, and then his friend goes missing or something. But there's like a witness that he didn't know that there was a witness, and I don't actually remember. Did he do it? I don't really know. There was loads of affairs going on, and it was just a bit like Coronation Street. I mean, I'd recommend it if you liked boring thrillers. Down the Hatch by MC Beaton. To be fair, this is a book in a series, and it's right in the middle of the series, and I should have read from the beginning of the series, but it's one of those series that are like standalone serialized novels. So they're all about Agatha Raisin, who's so much like Agatha Christie, Jesus. And she is like amateur sleuthing, love interest history that I bet could be really interesting if you read it from the beginning. So I really did hinder my process there. So that was not the book's fault itself at all. But I did not vibe with it. I skimmed it, I barely read it. I just didn't care. We'll go with Hidden Gifts. Hidden Gifts is a young adult. It's similar to the Accidental Medium actually, in that you kind of have this girl whose her tarot readings are suddenly becoming true. And I, despite not loving it, right, I was intrigued to maybe read the rest of the series. I have not continued on that in the slightest. I've never seen this card before, and she doesn't understand, and it's kind of haunts her throughout the book, but I just didn't find it that menacing, and I just didn't really vibe with it. The Winter of Second Chances. So I read this on Christmas Day, I believe. And it was adorable. It was so cute, so wholesome, little romance. Also, one of the characters is called Annie, and that is why I got it. Basically, Annie's found her husband Max cheating on her. She works in like this restaurant, but she goes to the countryside to house sit, and it's just like, it's a cute little small town romance. She kind of sets up a cafe. They're a bit of an enemies to lovers. They just kind of, they find each other irritating, and then they sort of fall in love, and it's really cute. A Three Dog Problem. Once again, this was me being stupid and not reading from the start of a series. This is in the Windsor Knot, like, royal investigation series, where it's like the Queen investigates stuff. And I didn't get into the writing style, and I couldn't even tell you what the mystery was. I think someone was found dead by a swimming pool. I got it because I was dogs on the cover. Katherine of Aragon, 6-2 to Queen's Alison Weir. I'm going to put that out there. I really like this series. Actually, I'll put both books of the series just there now. I really enjoy the series. I was like almost sobbing at the end of both of those books because you spend so long with the queens. So they're basically, it's 6 books in the series about the 6 Tudor queens of Henry VIII. So starting with Katherine of Aragon, then Anne Boleyn, and they all have a book each. And I love 6 the musical, so this is why I started reading the books. And all the books are really floppy, that's just... Plus, obviously it is fiction. It's based on real events, but it is fiction. And the moment when Anne gets beheaded at the end of her book, Jesus Christ, that was morbid. Not because she got beheaded, but like, you hear it from her point of view and what it feels like. Even though the author, I'm assuming, has never been beheaded, so we can't really say how accurate that is. Reckless Afterlife of Harriet Stoker. So it's about this girl that just goes to this like old abandoned house and she trips and falls and dies. And it turns out there's a bunch of ghosts in there and they all have certain powers and she gets power hungry. There's like a war between the ghosts and the powers and the ghosts in the basement that are creepy. But then it kind of turns into a bit of a murder mystery, like gifts. It was just fine. It was just fine. And it was under 200 pages. There was only 12 chapters and it was about these 12 characters sort of each getting a gift for the next character's chapter, which is interesting. So like it started with Maddie buying a gift for Peter, and then the next chapter is Peter buying a gift for Chloe, and then Chloe chapter is Chloe buying a gift for her grandma, you know. The fact that I remember that though. The Trust, it was kind of rich girl moving to tiny little countryside village mixed with murder, which does sound like a good combo, but it's something to do with like these paintings getting stolen, and then she keeps stumbling across all the murders, and she's just really arrogant, and I just didn't like her character, and I really wanted it to end a certain way and it didn't, so I got annoyed. So that might just be a personal vendetta that I have against the book. The Knife of Never Letting Go. Read me. One of my boyfriend's favourite series is, I don't even know if it's his favourite book. I don't even know if it's one of his favourite series. I'm just going to tell you that it is. It might be a lie. You can ask Sam about that. It's about young old Todd. He hears other people's noise, like they hear each other's thoughts. I recently read the second book in the series last month and reviewed it in my recent May book reviews. So this is book 1 and it's just a vibe. The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, it was a vibe. It's a cute little dystopian world and it was just like sort of a bit of an adventure novel because he's on his way to try and find the utopia of the book. The New World is the little novella that comes after that. Why am I putting it up there? Put it in the meh because it's a novella. I feel like you can never really go above 3 stars for a novella unless it's absolutely spectacular. It was fine. It was about how one of the characters got onto the planet. And it was really wholesome, I will say. It was probably one of the better novellas in the series. I've only read 2, but out of the 2 of them, it was the better one. Okay, then we have Good Girl's Complex and Bad Girl Reputation. Good Girl Complex, I really enjoyed. This was the first romance I ever read though, so if I read it again, I may despise it. But yes, it is like After. It is Elle Kennedy's version of After. But I feel like it's After done right. It's really cringy, really cliche, really over the top, really good girl, bad boy. And I loved it. I ate it up. I don't care. The second book, however, was shit. The first book is about one twin and the second book's about the other. And the second book just kind of, it was like, ugh. It was like a pile of nothing. Nothing even happened. They were just kind of back and forth like, oh, I like her, oh, she likes me. Ooh. Like, I don't care, get a move on, Jesus. Oh, All the Bright Places. That's a good one. It's about, I think his name's Finch and Violet. Yeah, Finch and Violet. There's a lot of mental health stuff going on in this book. I think he has bipolar disorder and she's depressed because her sister died. About them sort of meeting each other and sort of finding a new life with one another, and it really gets you in the feels, but it is a good book. Death and Papa Noel, little novella. I'll put this, I really skimmed it on Christmas Day, I'll be honest with you. That's because it's a novella, so I can't really argue that for the rest of Ian Moore's books. But it wasn't my favourite. The Love Hypothesis. I loved it. Once again, hardcore cliche. Did I care? No, I loved it. No. Anxious People. That's another great one. Yeah, I'll put it up there. Why not? So Anxious People by Frederick Bachman it's about this like bank robber. He's holding people hostage that are like there's a bunch of people viewing a flat viewing, and he's holding them hostage at gunpoint, and it's about sort of everyone's points of views about how all their lives sort of intertwine. Is just so interesting, and you get sort of back and forth between the police officers and the bank robber and the present day and before the bank robbery, and just all the build up, how those people ended up there, all their personalities, and it was just so well written. Like it was great. It was really good, and all their stories kind of intertwined, and it was genuinely so interesting. One of us is lying. I'll put it in the Met, and I'll agree that the second one should also go there. I've never heard of people reading the second one, but the third one's coming out soon. So the first one's about Bronwyn, and then the other three. And then the second book's about Bronwyn's sister in the year below, but when she's the same age as Bronwyn. The first one, they're in detention and someone dies. And then the other four of them that were in detention are kind of the suspect. I loved Addie so much more in the show than I did in the book. I found her really dull. And then in the second book, there's like a bomb thing going on, I think. I did enjoy the second book though. Arguably, I think I may have enjoyed the second book more, but that might just be because I'm so familiar with the first book. Then I might as well just do Two Can Keep a Secret. That is probably my favourite Karen and McManus book. It's about these two twins have sort of just moved to this school district, and there's sort of some murders going on. Classic serial killer kind of vibe, like girls are going missing, I think. It did remind me a bit of A Google's Guide to Murder, which is always a plus for me. Oh, How to Kill Your Family. Great title. And saw this book in hardback, and this was one of the books that was just on my radar for months until it became in paperback. Then I bought it, and I read it, and I loved it. And the chapters are so long though, like that's ridiculous. Don't do that. Bella Mackie, actually fix that. Acting revenge and killing all the members of her family. But it's not a thriller. I'd say it is more of a contemporary or literary fiction. Whee! I'm amazed that's only happened once. Wrangle Stone. Gorgeous cover. This cover is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And that's why I was so disappointed that it was so bad. It's like a zombie book, but then it starts to become kind of fantasy. And I mean, I know a zombie book's probably fantasy already, but it becomes sort of more complicated fantasy, and that's just not what I was in the mood for. I was in for like a simple zombie book. If you have simple zombie book recommendations, I can't find any. I've hardly looked, but I can't find any. And I want to read a good old zombie book. Because I loved Warm Bodies, the film. And apparently there's a book version of it that I could probably just read, actually. Right, let's just put that there and just not discuss that one. It's 200 pages of nothing. I love the Thursday Murder Club series, however the first book I really didn't enjoy. It took me ages to get through. I didn't understand a word of it, and I just could not get into the writing, which is strange because I loved the second book. So I don't understand that at all in the slightest. I've just bought the third book. I'm thinking I'll give the first book another go because clearly that's my fault. So I'm going to read the third book and give him another shot because he deserves it. Where it belongs. I reread the series this year and I forced Sam to read it because I love him and he deserves to read it, and I couldn't hold off any longer. I really did try my best. And just the whole series is just fabulous. Although I will put Killjoy slightly lower. But I need to give Killjoy another chance. I've just never really gotten into Killjoy. You get to see all like her drafts, and I just love all like the stats, and you get like the spreadsheets and the pictures that she takes and just all the evidence. You get to see what she's thinking, and she has a dog called Barney. I'm not over it. Anyway, Little Cafe of Copenhagen. This is also by Julie Kaplan. Little Cozy Cottage in Ireland. They're both little cute romances, sort of travel romances. So obviously one set in Copenhagen, one in Ireland. I don't really have much more to say than that. Like, they're not that depthful. The Christmas Murder Game. It's about these cousins, I think. They've all gone to this house, their aunt's house, after the aunt has died, and they're to sort of play her Christmas puzzle game. But you know, then people start dying, which is kind of fun. The Paris Apartment, Lucy Foley. It was good. It wasn't the best book I've ever read. I've recently read another book by her, The Hunting Party, and I did prefer The Hunting Party. The Paris Apartment is good, but it did drag on in some places. It's about a gal. she's gone to Paris to visit her half-brother, but he's not at his flat when she gets there, and she's like, and they're like really expensive mansions, and you sort of see the viewpoints of every single person in the mansion as she sort of searches for her missing brother. And there were some great twists in it. I did love it. It had me on the hook, but I will say I did get a little bored at points. Oh, An Expert in Murder. This was a series. It's kind of like classic, like Miss Marple kind of stuff. And I couldn't get into it, and I skimmed it, and I couldn't tell you what it's about. The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary is probably my least favourite Beth O'Leary book, but I love Beth O'Leary. All her books are amazing. They're all so good. This is the romance between, I think, Addie and Dylan, and they're both going to the same wedding, and like Dylan's car breaks down, or maybe it's Addie's car. One of their cars breaks down, so they have to travel together. But they've previously met in Spain, where she was sort of like the maid to his house. Like, that was her summer job, and they met there. And then something happens that you find out later as to why they stopped talking to one another and why they're like not great together. So you get then and now perspective. And there's just some great side characters, and I just do love the development. What a journey. What a journey. Oh my god, what a pun, because it's the road trip. We'll go on to They Both Die at the End, where they both die at the end, and no one seems to believe it. I didn't believe it. I didn't think they both die at the end. They did both die at the end. Spoilers. But they both die at the end. It's about these two lads in the future, and it's where you get a text at like midnight, like, you know, if you're gonna die the next day. There's a name for it, but I've forgotten what the sort of like website that they have in the thing is called. And when they both find out that they're gonna die that day, they get to meet up with other people that are gonna die that day. So they both sort of like start chatting online, and then they meet up, and you know, they fall in love, but you sort of see how they spend their last day together and how they die. And my god, traumatizing. But that was a good book. Then we have Scythe. My boyfriend recently told me this is utopian, not dystopian, but then, you know, some shit still goes down. So beautiful. This book was so good. I love Citra, and I love Rowling, and I love the Scythe universe, and I'm so sad it's over because I just finished all the books in it, and it's just like, it's all gone. I'm not over it, okay? Just don't talk to me. Conquered everything. They've conquered death. But you can't let everybody live forever, because then, you know, overpopulation. People are ordained scythes, and they are allowed to go around and glean people. Make them dead forever, and they won't be revived. And basically it's about Citra and Rowan, who become scythe apprentices, and their journey to becoming scythes. And that's all of it. That's all the books, kiddos. This is our final tier. This is what we've been left with. Whee! Also, this is sheepy. Ugh, at least I can go to sleep now. Bye!